Today, my guest is Eric Branner, a lifelong creative with a sunshine vibe, trained concert classical guitarist, performer, and music school owner. Eric Branner found himself spending upwards of 10 hours a week on administration alone, which cut into his teaching time and earning potential. So he knew there had to be a better way. So he built a SaaS tech company focused on streamlining appointment-based business. So since inception, Fons, this company he founded, has helped business owners to earn more than $20 million and quickly growing. So on average, professionals who use Fons earn up to 25% more each month. So in this episode, I want to ask him all the questions so he can share with us how he built a successful tech startup and to wheel an idea into reality, despite the fact that he's a first-time founder and he comes from a music background. So let's hear it. Welcome to Fast Track Podcast, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
In my intro, I talk about, right, you're a musician and then you now have this successful SaaS startup. I think the first question coming to most of people's mind would be, how did you make it, right? Being a first-time founder with no technical background, where's this, what is the story of from an idea become a reality? What have you done? What have you been through?
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll try to boil that down. The inception really quickly is that I was a musician. I ran a music school, but I was here in Seattle, which is a technology hub in Seattle, Washington, and I was kind of seeking something else from the universe. I'd been doing it for a long time successfully. My wife was an actor. We were having a great time here. But I was looking to either go back to get an MBA or go to law school. That had always been kind of my plan. And I was presented with the opportunity to work with someone to build a technology company. And I would be the idea behind it, and I would create the culture around it. And the person who I connected with, our first investor, was someone who had done this multiple times, had exited multiple times, had recently had a very successful exit, and was looking to put bandwidth into his next project. So I was extremely fortunate to fall into a very accomplished technical and design team and management team. So I knew nothing about technology. I remember when we had our first meetings, we were talking about basically how to automate my music school, right? Because it was a very inefficient operation, and I thought I did it better than many others. And I didn't know what UX was, and I was like, UX, UI, what? And everybody was laughing at me, and I was like, I need to read a lot of books. So, but yeah, I was navigated through it, and I really found that I loved it, and I found that the scene of building a startup and a technology company was so much like being in a musical group or a band or it's creative, right? You're building something out of nothing, and it's really hard, just like being a musician. So I actually felt really comfortable in the space. And the thing that I also really loved is how many really bright and gifted and motivated human beings were attracted to the space, right? So as I was working with these great designers and engineers and people that were just really fastidious about understanding how to create things. I mean, it's really not that much different than playing a Bach fugue on the guitar, right? Or playing in an orchestra or playing in a band. It's as far as mindset and attitude. So that was kind of our origin story of how we got started and how I tripped into it. And, and I've really, fallen in love with the process.
Very interesting. You use the word you're presented with this opportunity and you are falling into it. It sounds like you presented this opportunity. Would you like to share with us how did it happen? How did you, come across either your co-founders or your investors? Like maybe we can learn something from it, right? Also, how to network, how to, show your work ethics that people love. They want to work with you.
Yeah, well, I think one is I was very enthusiastic about the work that I did, and I built over 20 years of teaching here in Seattle. I had a very connected group of clients, right? And I was very fortunate for that, from professional athletes to really well-known people in technology to different over time that I built this just community, right? That was very organic from teaching people's kids and themselves, which creates a real strong bond and a lot of trust. And I also, I mean, when I said present with opportunity, I just kind of was telling the universe that I was ready to do something different. And it really did happen. I was like talking to my wife and saying, I'm ready to do something else. I'm going to start applying to MBA programs and law schools. And I just opened my eyes, and almost immediately, I was talking with someone that had recently, finished their exit from their last big project and was looking to do their next big thing. And they were very interested in the space that I was doing. And so it was an organic process. There was a lot of luck involved. But I think when I'm looking back at it, it was such a massively educational moment. And also having the willingness to not know what I was doing and be okay with that for a while, were the two big pieces to it. Right. So,
Yeah.
and that's how it kind of took off.
And it often happens that, someone who has this idea to ready to do something or try something or look for something, and then they tell the friends and families, and then more opportunities will show up. If you keep that to yourself, nobody knows that you want that. So you already have this networks from students or the parents from students, and then you tell people, and then they already know you, and then there's more opportunities show up. And what's funny, it's you mentioned that to be comfortable with not knowing everything, right? The process. So can you tell us some stories that, now looking back, some of the things that you didn't know at that moment, and now you look back and think, how am I not supposed to know that being a tech founder?
Oh my, there's just so much. And it's actually, I knew right away going into it that I did not know what I was doing, but I really wanted to. And I knew that I was a good learner. I love learning. I'm comfortable practicing guitar 5 to 7 hours a day. I always have had that piece to me. And I also knew that it was going to be to take a lot of, really not being prideful and saying, I don't know what you mean. What is the difference between UX and UI, right? Or
Yeah.
and from everything from incorporating to the legal stuff to managing a team and running stand-ups and being able to be able to organize our projects for what we're going to work on next, right? Learning about constraint theory, like all these, so I just started reading all the time and learning as quickly as I could. And again, the person that I founded the company with first originally, he'd been through it, and he was wise enough to know that I had the spark and the interest, and he let me make appropriate mistakes, right? Because I think they knew this would be a really long tail strategy. Building a SaaS company and building a brand is something it's not a 2 or 3 year project. It's a 7 to 12 year project, right? We knew that going into it. We knew I had time to learn, and, they had people in place to be like, oh, you can't do that, right? So we had good lawyers, and I had great technical founders help, and a really solid technical team. So I could be creative and I could be authentic and go out and start building community, right? Which is that was the thing I was really comfortable with, was going out and meeting people and telling people about the idea. When we started Fons was initially, it was the concept to run a music teachers school, right? Or a music school with a bunch of teachers. And the way that had always been traditionally done, I was very confident that I had one of the most successful schools probably in the United States, right? And I sat down, and instantly this team of engineers and designers and thought leaders were like, this is terrible. You're still sending invoices and taking paper checks. Like, we're not doing this. And I was like, what do you mean? So I had to go out and start really researching about what the modern applications were to be able to streamline these operations, and talking to personal trainers, gyms, academic tutoring firms, dog walkers, right? All these people that have client appointment-based relationships, businesses, really learning about them. And we started finding all these new ways of doing. And what we ended up coming up with was so far from what I originally imagined. It wasn't even close, right? But it was great because it was so collaborative, and so many minds were involved in it.
Why do you think later the structure of the product is so far from what you initially imagined?
Yes. Yeah. It
Well,
was, what's that?
why do you think it's very like there's a big gap in between? Is it because initially you based on your own understanding of the industry, and then compared to later you have talked to so many people? Like, why do you think there's such a gap?
I think it was a gap because what we had done is created something that worked for us, right? And we had that happens. We create operational systems. You do it. Everybody has an operational system they put into their business that can somewhat become through a narrow focus, right? And then when you start bringing other ideas, right, you start to be like, wow. And to give you like a really concrete example, the way this business has always worked is if I were going to teach you music or be your physics tutor, I would, at the beginning of the month, I would send you an invoice for the sessions we would have that month. You would pay me hopefully by the 5th of that month. Often you wouldn't, right? It has no correlation to your financial situation. It's just people don't like doing invoices. And that was a hallmark of the way the whole business in the industry had worked for a very long time. And we were in this new phase where that wasn't necessary anymore, right? Everything can be automated. Like invoicing for this type of work doesn't make sense. If you think of it like now, it's almost like an Uber. Like my students just show up and they get billed for being there. Technology has been able to solve that through a myriad of ways. So I think we were fortunate in building our solution to have a tech visionary on our team, right? Who was able to say, oh my gosh, we're not doing that. Let's do this and try this and experiment with that and talk to these people. And that's how it really morphed into being a real tight operational toolkit that we've built for these types of businesses.
Yeah. And I also find it's very valuable in your case that you have a business partner who has been a successful tech founders in the past. And now you are a very experienced service-based service provider, or you run your own music school. And now you combine the two worlds together, and then you develop a product that serve those service-based business owners using technology.
Yes. Yeah, it never would have happened.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where every week probably 5 or 10 people will contact me like, I've got an idea for an app. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, engineering is extremely expensive right now, and no code is kind of a thing that everybody's exploring. But really building a company is really difficult because there's so many moving pieces, right? Yeah. Not only building the products one piece, but building customer base. Who knew that was going to be so hard, right? Yeah. To get people to try this new radical way of doing something. It was very hard to get people to adopt. No one wants to try a new thing. It's so much tenacity. And then there's 10 other different pieces to that puzzle of building a product like this. So yes, having someone that's been through it is fabulous, because they're often wanting to find someone that's energetic, someone that knows a space really well, someone that has real domain authority and that's proven it. That's powerful, right? So mixing that domain authority that I had and my enthusiasm and belief, right? Because that the other piece is that traditionally musicians, artists, academics are not seen as much as a professional as a car mechanic, right? Most car mechanics make more money than people with doctorates in classical piano, right? And so our real vision began to build this tool to elevate that whole career path, because it's so meaningful. Like I knew the work that I was doing really mattered to many people's lives, and as a music teacher, my value proposition was that people would work with me and find joy in their life and become good at something and learn how to learn, and generally really use that as a stepping stone to be happy in their adulthood and their existence. So it was a really great experience, a really beautiful path.
Yeah, and it's also create impacts on many people's, like small business owners, and also has an indirect impact on their lives. And my other question would relate it to the fact that your company has helped so many like service providers increase their earnings by 25%. What would you think are the reasons people are underpaid in the past, or they did not earn as much as they could?
It is much of it is, and I'll just speak because I'm going to speak to the music industry, because I think that's just, I'll pick one. They're all, of all the verticals we serve, they're close. But in music, traditionally, it was almost taboo to have music, to be money be a piece of it, especially the more like classical music or jazz. The more it went in that direction of like highly skilled musicianship, the less you wanted to talk about it. So
Why?
it's the way it's all, they were assumed that the goal would be to get a professorship or to tour. And and so what we grew up, when I grew up studying with the many of the famous people that were out there teaching, it was always kind of like, assumed you either came from a financial background and had money, like a trust fund or something, or you had a professorship, or there was some way. And what we found, and I've been very blessed with mentors, people that have popped into my life and have kind of guided me. And the thing that was a turning point for me on the journey to building Fons was I had been teaching for probably 10 or 12 years. And it was the first time I started to leave the industry. And I said, I did the same thing. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go do something else. And I was starting a family. I had a beautiful studio in downtown Seattle, but I was like, I think it's time for me to like get into a day job or something. And I had a client who was 60 years old, and he was a legend in Seattle. He knew everybody. He was a great connector of people. He was an architect that had built everyone's house, right? And so he was in a lesson. He's like, Branner, don't quit teaching. You're too good at this. He's like, I want you to double your rates, right, tomorrow. And I was like, I can't do that. That's weird. He's like, just do it. No one's going to care. And I was like, they're going to care. And I was like, I can't do that. So finally he talks me into it. And basically overnight, I was like, hey, I'm either leaving this industry. I have to double my rates to make this really work for me. And not only did literally no one care, like all of my clients were like, okay, or we're so glad to hear that you're doing that. So you're staying in this field. 8 weeks later, I had a massive waiting list because perceived value came into play, where I was getting more calls for new clients than my very famous professors that I had worked with. And I was charging almost twice as much as they were, right? And so I was like, wait, this is weird. Like, you should be reaching out to this person. But they wanted to be, they didn't, the average consumer doesn't really know how to judge outside of saying, oh, well, there's these two options. This person's X and this person's 2X. This person must be the person I want for me or my family. And that was like, my mind exploded. And then I kind of was like, not only did I have another decade of, making a really great living, buying a house here in Seattle and having a great life and doing great work, I started really pushing that idea to other service providers, being like, dude, if you want, your marketing strategy is to double your rates. It always works, provided that you're really good at what you do. I've talked to literally thousands of music teachers and tutors and personal trainers and saying, hey, if you want to get busy, first thing you do is like, at least charge as much as your plumber, okay? Right? Because you have so much training, you deserve at least to make as much as the person who works on your car, okay? And then it's 100% effective. So it's a long answer, but it's really important to me because it's one of like the key tenets of my philosophy about this field that I believe in so much. Is it's great to see people come in and we see them, we're like, oh my gosh, you have a doctorate of musical arts. You're charging like you're charging half of what you should. Please do this. And then they change it and they go, oh my gosh, no one cared. It always works. Thank you. So it's meaningful to be able to help guide people in that direction.
Yeah, actually, at the end of the day, it's what's your worth is equal to how much people are willing to pay, not how much you think you're worth, right?
Oh, you should say that again, because that's really good. Yeah. Can you repeat that?
Yes, your worth is equal to how much people are willing to pay. It's not equal to how much you think you're worth.
And that's so beautiful, right? And it's also part of being a community is that I'm very interested in the idea of equity and who I can work with. I would never turn away a person for money. So in my teaching, I was able to charge this higher rate, also knowing that if I ever needed to, I would, by all means, I can teach people for free because I can say, oh, I charge enough here. And the people that work with me, they're so appreciative of that. Like my clients that are very affluent, they're happy to pay it because they know that's the scene I'm creating. They want me to thrive. They know my kids. They want my kids to be healthy. and they know the other families I work with. So it's a really beautiful business structure that really helps everyone. I will say that in the last 3 years, I've had one person balk, because I still teach. I'm doing Fons, but I still teach much less than I used to, but it's something I do. I have 10 or 12 students at all times. And I've had one person balk at my rate structure, and they were the CFO of a national insurance company here in the United States. And I was like, wow, that's just disrespectful. Like, it's like, it's one thing to be like, you know, a school teacher would often try to pay my rate, and I'd say, hey, let me give you a break, right, or something like that. But in general, people have been fabulous about it.
Yeah, that's great. Like I oftentimes hear the same story, like increase your rate, increase your rate. But on the other hand, I want to ask you, what advice would you give it to service providers like coach, trainers, teachers? To what extent they can increase their rate?
Well, that is a challenge that we're finding, is that we don't really know what the ceiling is. It really depends on where you are. There are, what one thing that you will see is most people are not bold enough, right? Because it's the way of the economy right now. People want there's not nearly enough service providers for what we do. Like right now, you and I having a human connection, right? Even though it's digital, it's still human. I'm getting to know you and you're getting to know me. People are starving for that, right? And so our work that we're doing as a personal trainer isn't just let's get really healthy. It's I'm here to listen to you and to know you. And so it's that all the statistics and reports are saying over the next 10 years, it's just such a growth field, right? So I don't know what the limit would be. I do know that I know what providers charge, and I know some of them charge incredible amounts of money. And when they do, they often just are busy making much more money, not
Okay.
necessarily based on their education or their level of skill, but based on what they've put out there in the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it's quite important that a service provider or a teacher should have the adequate experience or skill set to provide quality service, and then they are entitled to charge higher rates? Because I'm just wondering if some people charge too much and then they won't get enough clients. People just think it's not worth the money they're paying for.
Gosh, that's a great question. And the only way that I could really equate that is I try to imagine myself as when I was first started teaching. I put myself through college teaching, and my grandfather was a music teacher. I've always known I love teaching people. Is what I lacked in experience then, I had youthful energy and excitement about. So my students then still did really well, because I might not know as many tricks and I might not have the patience, but I was so stoked. I was so into I was so grateful to be there. So one of the things that we see is young providers that come in with great enthusiasm and knowledge of their craft. They charge more and they get really busy. So I think a lot of it is more about your attitude. If you believe that you're helping people, right, that drives you. If you believe you're serving people, if you believe that your work is meaningful, and you're willing to put the price has really become secondary,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that's what people will get, right? If you can make a child happy, right? If you can bring joy into a child's heart or an adult's heart, it's priceless, and parents and clients will be happy to pay it.
Yeah. And oftentimes people make emotional decisions, not rational decisions. And what I like about what you said just now is, you have this energy, right? Make people feel stoked. And if, from my personal experience, I really feel that if someone is performing even a service or provide a product to me, or we have a working relationship, I can feel the passion, the sparkles in the other person's eye. Then I feel I'm really learning something from someone who is passionate about this topic. And I actually had a guitar teacher when I was, I don't know, maybe 10 years old or 12 years old. I actually stopped with the teacher because every time when, the hour is finished and it's my class is finished and the teacher just want to, let me go and then finish the day, I don't feel the passion. I kind of lost my passion in learning guitar. So I completely understand what you say. Yeah.
Yeah, and that teacher probably was highly educated, but was not passionate about transferring the knowledge and seeing young people struggle their way through learning. Like, I love that. I started playing guitar late. And so I really remember what it was like to learn. And I love being a newcomer at a new idea. So yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you.
Maybe if I have met you back then, I was still playing guitar right now.
Oh, it's never too late.
Yeah. So my last question is, what do you think are the, let's talk about, starting a successful company or tech company. What do you think are the success ingredients?
Well, it is, the reality is I wasn't prepared for how difficult it would be. And if I did not have people around that I really trusted to help, I don't think I would have made it. And it is, to come on and be like, oh my gosh, it's so fun, it's so great, do a tech startup. It's really hard. The SaaS space is really difficult. It's competitive. Everything's challenging, right? And so it's relentless. So I would say, I used to have this great quote in life. Whenever I was, say my car broke, I'd be like, I can fix my car, I can play a Bach fugue, right? Like, I should be able to think that out. And this has been an experience that has really pushed me to the very limits of my learning and my ability to keep up, my social skills, trying to remain authentic. And so the thing that's, our stories still being told, as far as what success will mean and what will come next for us, is it is worth it to chase after your dream and to try it, and to realize that you're going to need to be very resilient. Like, you could be super lucky, like the stories of startups we read about that become unicorns in 6 months before they have any customers or whatever, but that's not really likely to be your journey in building a business. But I do think that building a startup is great to do with people that you like and friends, because it's like a family. Like, you're in it, you're going to be battling together all the time. And so it's different than other business structures in that sense, that the people I work with, we're like family, right?
Yeah.
So I would say resilience and not giving up, and also willingness to really admit and prioritize your time, because there's not going to be enough of it, right? So you're relentlessly editing, right? That's the thing that when I meet with a lot of other founders that are really early and just getting started, I hear these ideas and they're so scattered in where their focus is. And so learning how to like run a Kanban board well, and only choosing the top card, and being very protective of your time and your energy, understanding constraint theory really well, like read the goal again and again and find out where your bottlenecks are, is something else that's been really helpful for us. Because for instance, I was brilliant. I was like, I can get people to sign up for this thing all day, right? But and I was so excited because we got all these signups, and I was like, I'm basically ready to exit. None of them were converting. None of them were becoming paid customers. And so what a tough lesson to learn, that I had to go back and be like, oh my gosh, my onboarding is terrible and my email drip is awful. I should probably do that too. So, that it's that constant state of being like, yes, this is so cool. And then, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And I did something so great and I messed something up so badly. So I think it's just a really, I'm a pretty laid back person, but also intense by nature, as far as my focus. And it keeps me up at night like nothing else ever has. Like, it's like I can't really turn it off. It's like I think about all the time, which I'm sure most startup founders do.
Yeah. But later, did you learn to turn it off? Otherwise, you cannot sustain this level, right?
No, it's been really, that's been my greatest challenge, is that I'm a sensitive human being. Like, I know hundreds of our customers, because I use them to learn about how to build the product. I talk to them every day. I jump into the customer success channels. I really care about their success because they're me, right? And I want to build the best platform in the world to do this. And we're competing with really gigantic companies with a much smaller team. So, I take it very personally. So, when the inherent bugs that happen in the system, they're going to happen, right, to every company.
Yeah.
That really stresses me out, or, it just,
Yeah,
I
because
don't.
you really cares. Yeah, you really care about the product and your customers.
Yeah, yeah, it's become very close to me.
Mm-hmm. And well, I from your story, I learned what I learned, right, is that you mentioned so many times about people. So you have like group of people who support you within your company. Also your customers, you care about them, very people oriented, so customer centric, and you talk to different type of industry service providers, understand what's their need. And in a way, you use that insights to develop product that serve them better. I think eventually all this like learnings from your stories can be also implemented and borrowed by other tech startup founders. So for that, I thank you so much for sharing your personal stories and your learnings.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was great to chat with you.
And lastly, would you like to share with us where people can find you, follow you, learn more about Fons? If they are service providers, coach, teachers, probably they can use your service.
Absolutely. We know I'm Eric Branner on LinkedIn. If anyone would like to talk, I love talking about startups. I love hearing about new ideas. Fons.com is where you can go to learn more about Fons. And you can also connect with us there. So that's a great place to reach out to us. And we're on all the social channels under Fons.
All right. So as usual, you can find, for the audience, you can find all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking with you.